Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. I had a lovely dream this morning that I was having coffee with Luangpor Viradhammo. Oh, isn't that a nice dream?
Yes.
And it's his birthday on the 27th of July. So if you want to send him a message and swamp him, go for it. With messages of love, kindness, and gratitude. So he is my good friend and profound teacher, and reflecting on the kind of goodness of our lives with those kinds of contacts and those kinds of beings that we have the good fortune, the Kalyanamitta and Acharyas that come into our lives, brings to me a deep sense of contentment. And gratitude is contentment, isn't it? It's not something that's sort of that I construct, that I own in some kind of way, like a new telephone or something like that. But rather, it's like the good fortune of having good fortune and remembering that good fortune, isn't it? And that's directly opposed to the projects of becoming. So a lot of the questions that have come up where folk are obviously they're quite diligent and skillful in their meditation, but still there's a kind of tone in the questions of okay, what do I do next? And what do I need to achieve? And so it's a kind of me doing something to achieve something in a future possibility. And that is a natural way to approach any project. So, like sometimes people will ask me about ambition. Well, is it wrong to be ambitious? Well, not really. Like creating a monastery in this part of the world is a pretty ambitious plan, because there are very few Buddhists here and not enough Thai people, that's for sure. Only one Malaysian person that I know, and no Singaporeans. So how am I going to survive? So it's quite an ambitious project to try to create a monastery in a secular environment where Buddhism isn't known, and so on and so forth. But the ambition doesn't have to be loaded with ego. It doesn't have to be loaded with attachment to tanha and craving. It can be a part of one's capacity to be a hardworking person and try to create something for the well-being of others. And so family life can have ambition in it. You want your kids to, or your parents or whoever, you want them to do well. So you're ambitious at work and you try to get a good salary so the kids can go to college and all of the rest of it. And obviously within that, some of it is wholesome and some of it is egotistical. And that's the stuff we work with. But those worldly projects are about time. They're about accomplishments and structures and building things. So without saying that that's wrong, there's the other project. So I jokingly call that other project of building up a good life or creating a monastery, this sort of bodhisattva project. How I live in the world and how I manifest and how I can use my skills and good energies in a way which is beneficial to myself and others. And that's a necessary and beautiful thing. As you know, otherwise you wouldn't be a human being. It'd be a a centipede living under the ground or something. So, but then this other part, the kind of Arahant project, is a more it's very curious because it's not about becoming. It's not about time. It's not about accumulation. It's not about building something up. And so it's very hard to switch to that mode, perhaps, because the other mode is so dominant in the way we live our lives. It has to be. You have to get to work. You have to get your work done. You have to re-educate yourself so that your skills are up to the mark, or you have a household budget, and you've got 8 people in the family. You've got to make sure that that budget can feed everyone and pay for the insurance. And so there's this constant sense in our normal everyday lives of organizing and figuring out and doing stuff and so on. When you come to meditation, we're moving towards something that's always there. How can you move towards something that's always there? If it's always there, where's to move to? Whereas craving and wanting and time is always moving to a future possibility that will be more whatever you want, more successful and more beautiful. And so the language in this other project, which I would say the transcendent project or the spiritual project, is like the language of letting go, or the language of desirelessness or non-desire. So fulfillment on a worldly level comes about through worldly success. You decide that you want to develop a skill, so you go to university and you study something, you develop that skill. So it's all about becoming and getting, and so fulfillment is in acquisition. It's not bad, and it's necessary. Fulfillment is in getting these things to make my life more reasonable. But the way of fulfillment in this other project is the fulfillment of non-desire. And I think logically you can see, if I'm sitting here, and like before this meeting, we have a beautiful tanka on the wall here that Venerable Chunda got as a layman, and he was in Tibet. And it's just gorgeous, the colors, the greens and the reds, and it has a medicine Buddha, and it has Venerable Sariputta Mahamoggallana and white elephants and Amitabha Buddha up top. It's very, very ornate Tibetan tanka. Now I can look at that and dwell in non-desire. For one, it's beautiful, so it appeals to my sense of aesthetics. So that's nice. That's helpful. And then I can just dwell in non-desire. Now that's not a project of acquisition. It's just a project of presence, being present to something. It's easy with something beautiful. It's more difficult with something which is ugly or repulsive or painful or whatever. So quite often the way to start with a sense of non-desire is to take something like that, like something that is pleasing. Nature is very good for that. Like we have this lake, Pike Lake, that we have, our property goes on to, which is 6 kilometers long and about 2 kilometers wide. Many, many cottages around this lake, and we have a boat. We can go on the lake, and sometimes I'll just go out into the lake, in the middle of the lake, and just float and just look at the sky and just allow myself to be in that space. So that's a natural way to enter into the sense of non-desire. I guess an apartment in Singapore, it's more difficult. You don't have that kind of beauty. But what would non-desire feel like? Wouldn't it be fulfilling? And that's not because you acquired the thing you wanted, but you allowed the mind just to rest in presence. It's like this, non-desire. And that language is the language which is taking you to transcendence. The language of intellect and structure and problem solving. Okay, so going back to my endless furniture analogies, when I'm building a piece of furniture, it's problem solving, and I enjoy that. It's a puzzle, both manually, how can I do this, but also intellectually, how can I put this together, and what method should I use? So there I'm using intellect. I have a goal, and if I do it well, I'm happy with the result. That's a kind of happiness of getting something, and that's fulfilling. But you could see that that's a very, very limited kind of happiness, because I might go blind. I probably will do before I die. I might be sick. I might get bored. I might run out of wood. I might get lung cancer from the dust I'm getting from the woodwork or whatever. So it's very tenuous. And quite often I'm so self-critical that I don't like what I do. So that whole project is limited. It can't, but I still enjoy it. I still like doing it, so I can do stuff. Well, this other sense of aspiration to nibbana uses a different kind of language, desirelessness. So then people will say to me, "Oh, is it wrong to have desire? Like, is ambition wrong?" And that's when we get the two realms mixed up. No, like, it's not wrong. But I can do both at the same time. I can try to create a piece of furniture with an aspiration to make a good piece of furniture, but also look at the whole desire pattern. I want this to be good, or, oh, I'm no good at this, or whatever. I can do that in the moment, and I become a better worker. I become more competent from non-desire because I'm more focused. I'm more with what needs to be done, and yet I have the puzzle to solve, or making a monastery. I think this is my 5th monastery that I've been involved in the building of. And although it is an altruistic project, which includes many, many people, I certainly have a lot of ego stuff that comes up around it. You know, the sense of, is it successful, or are we going to do it, or greed for materials or whatever. But I can observe that in the project of creating something which is useful for others. So I can do both. I can observe greed, hatred, and delusion, and I can also try to live a good life. And I have to live a good life. So a retreat is more about this other project, this project of letting go, of non-desire. And so in these questions, you like some of the folk who have asked these questions, they get to quite a peaceful state of mind, you know, quite a refined state of mind. And then the question comes up, what next? You know, what should I do next? And that's the what we call bhava tanha. So when you refer to the Four Noble Truths and you reference samudaya and nirodha, the cause of suffering is attachment to desire, samudaya, second noble truth. And then that desire is chopped up into 3, kama, bhava, and vibhava. And kama is sense desire, or just a constantly being absorbed into the objective realm, like constantly consuming something, basically. Vibhava is repression, trying to get rid of. And bhava is like becoming. And that's what you need to notice. When your mind becomes subtle, or not subtle, doesn't matter, and it becomes peaceful, rather than just saying, it's peaceful feels like this, bhava comes up and says, now what do I need to do? Huh? What should I do next? Should I try this? And that creates a sense of self and time, right? And this is not a time-bound project, it's timeless. Yeah? It's not about becoming, it's about being. So what kind of language might you use for that? Well, the Thai folk, the Ajahns will say Penyang Niang, if I have the tones right. It's like this. Luangpor tomatoes, it's like this. Now that's actually a very profound statement of non-becoming. if you think about it. It can be like a tautology. Sure, it's like this. How else could it be? Yeah, but that's not what it's pointing to. It's not pointing to a kind of philosophical statement about whether or what. It's pointing to a kind of existential awakening. It's like this. The mind is bright. It's present. You see what I mean? And that's probably the simplest way to let go of this sense of I'm someone who has to go somewhere to become something. Time. You know, like on your computer, you'll have the refresh button, the kind of half circle with the arrow. So you open a BBC website or something, and you can refresh it and get the. Well, it's like this, or Penyang Nieng is the refresh button of your mind, because if you actually do that, what is it like? It's like this. You're present, not becoming. And then notice the why is there a lack of contentment here? What, you know, and as soon as I put that question to someone, then they'll start to think. So sometimes questioning isn't good. Sometimes I put too many questions to people and they get confused. So then don't listen to me, but rather just put in the mind, it's like this. And trust, you know, and I keep coming back to this rather simplistic formula, but it's not just simplistic, it is profound because it is non-desire. It's about non-becoming. And if we don't give it a go, it won't work. So when I say it works, you mean you're trying to get something? No. It's a remembering. It's a remembering of something that's always there. The presence is always here. If you think about time, conceptual time, chronological time exists in the realm of physics and so on, but experientially, how do you experience life? Do you ever experience tomorrow other than as a thought or an anxiety or a projection? Do you ever experience yesterday other than a memory in the present moment? Isn't life always experienced in the present moment? It is. And that curious state of affairs can be investigated by taking refuge in presence rather than seeking some other experience. This is hard to do if the experience is negative or difficult. So we were talking about that yesterday. But then for those, you know, your mind starts to get states of emptiness and states of silence and that, then your curiosity starts to, is this it? Have I got it? Should I do something else? Then just do the refresh button. Don't think about it. Don't analyze it. Just say, it is what it is. It's like this. It's like this. Penyang Nieng. And have a, like, use that as your remembering of this moment, non-desire. And then those, you know, like moments where like I said yesterday, quite often the best part of a meditation is when the bell rings. and you know, oh, you're there again. And just appreciate that. This is non-desire. Feels like this. Non-becoming feels like this. So it's non-desire is very fulfilling, isn't it? You know, what is not fulfilling is the attachment to desire. So the sense of bhava, the kind of, I have to do something into the future. On one hand, yeah, but on this project, no. And that needs to be known as an object in itself. How it creates a sense of self in time. Let me continue this kind of discussion with the questions, because that would, I think, set nicely. So, first of all, dear Ajahn, I also heard from Senior Dhamma friend that the view that awareness is deathless. Do any suttas mention this? Could awareness exist alone without the other aggregates or the five senses? What happened to the awareness of the Buddha and Arahants after they entered Nibbana? Does their awareness restitute? Is it cosmic awareness? First of all, let me just read a bit from this. I often read from this. This is called The Island, and it's what you've always wanted to know, everything you've always wanted to know about Nibbana. So you can look it up. It's Luangpor Pasano and Luangpor Amaro put it together, and it's an anthology of the Buddhist teachings on Nibbana. And you'll find it on most of our websites, an Amaravati website or a Abhayagiri website. And the chapter which I often refer to with this kind of question, if I may read to you, this is chapter 8, unsupported and unsupportive consciousness. One of the ways in which the Buddha characterized the quality of awareness was to present it as a form of consciousness, vijnana. This represents a unique usage of the term. Customarily, vijnana only refers to the conditioned activity of the six senses. So when you have the five khandha formulation, for those of you who are familiar with that, you have vijnana as the fifth one. So then it's attributed to be anicca, dukkha, anatta. But here, customarily, vijnana only refers to the conditioned activity of the six senses. However, we also find that the Buddha gives us some adjectives with which to describe it when the term is used in this unique way. Vijnanam anidasanam anantang sabbato pabang. Consciousness that is signless, boundless, all luminous is one translation of this expression. It almost goes without saying that there is controversy as to the precise meaning of this enigmatic phrase. It appears in only a couple of places in the canon. However, the constellation of meanings of the individual words is small enough to give us a reasonable, clear idea of what the Buddha was pointing at. Firstly, we must assume that he is using vijnana in a broader way than it is usually meant. The Buddha avoided the nitpicking pedantry of many philosophers contemporary with him and opted for a more broad-brush colloquial style, geared to particular listeners in a language which they could understand. Thus, vijnana here can be assumed to mean knowing, but not the partial, fragmented, discriminative knowing, which the word usually implies. Instead, it must mean a knowing of primordial, transcendent nature. Otherwise, the passage which contains it would be self-contradictory. Secondly, anidasanam is a fairly straightforward word which means featureless, unmanifest, empty. The final phrase, sabbato pabang, is a little trickier. So he goes on to define that, but for our purposes, boundless, all luminous. So you have, now I know that's a difficult reading, so I would suggest you look at that yourselves, but what this text is saying, and our commentaries are saying, is that there is something about consciousness or awareness which is not dependent on experience, one way to put it. And if our attention is always on things which are dependent on other things, and so we get to the word sankhara. Let me just talk about that word. That one of the questions was, can you talk about the word sankhara? So you'll see that word a lot. And sankhara basically means anything that's, say, constructed in a matrix of other constructions. So a lamp is a construct, and the lamp is in the matrix of electricity and switch and power sources and all the rest of it. So it depends. It depends on all of that, and it may fail or it may work. The body is a sankhara. Mental images are sankharas, thoughts are sankharas, emotions are sankharas. Everything is a sankhara except the unconditioned, right? So the logic of this is, if you're looking for security and fulfillment in that which is dependently originated, or it depends on other things, then at some point, because it depends on all kinds of other things, it's impermanent and it'll fail you. So if I look at this lamp up here, the lamp shade was broken and we haven't replaced it by someone was sewing robes in here, and they had a long metal ruler and they whacked it. So it's broken. But as Ajahn Chah would say, well, it's meant to be broken. Its nature is broken. The body, relationships, weather, so unsatisfactory in that sense. It's not bad. But what is satisfactory in the sense of stability and reliability is the unconditioned. And here, what is unconditioned is this consciousness, in the way this is described here. So when you're doing the Nibbana project, as opposed to the Bodhisattva project, you kind of have to switch gears from becoming to letting go. You have to switch gears into trusting in presence rather than trusting in time, in future. And you get it, you get good at it. So what I'm just encouraging is, like, for those folk who are asking these subtle kind of questions, have confidence in your own intuitions. There's something you're doing right. So maybe I could look at those questions as a way of, so these are four that kind of I found would be similar. During formal meditation, when the mind stays in silent awareness, I can see objects arise and cease within awareness. I notice the contrast between this mind state, which is vast and stable, as opposed to that of the thinking mind that is constantly on the move. Soon thoughts cease and the mind becomes very still. The mind enters into an absorbed state easily. Should I bring in questions to stir the mind to contemplate and wait? Or do I gently go to a more open state of awareness for contemplation? I notice how useful staying in awareness and being aware of that for a while is, as this mind tends to quickly jump to analysis and thinking. So I would say, yeah, I'd say don't touch it. And I would say, like, just try again. I'm sorry, the same language. Trust that, like, you have some skill here in the way you're meditating. Just have confidence in your own intuitions. You know, there's like I've been saying, that wisdom functions in all of us if we give it a chance. Give wisdom a chance, as the song might go. So for this question, just trust and awareness, and then as the restlessness of, should I do something? Should I not do something? That's just another object. And have confidence that what you're doing is correct, it's good, it's wholesome, because it's bringing fulfilling results in that way. And then sometimes this is another question of a similar vein. Sometimes when the mind becomes peaceful, I know that is happening. But sometimes I become the peaceful mind. Does that mean that the peaceful mind is the awareness and there is no more object of peace? Again, it's one of those questions which will spin you around because it's in thought. And this is where thought is self-defeating, I would say. This is where thought cannot go, because thought it just doesn't work. So at some point you say, yeah, thought is useful up to a point, but now just let go, let go, let go. So, you know, when you have a question like that, kind of almost philosophical question, then say, well, it is what it is. It's both, it's neither, doesn't matter. So you just say, it's like this, Penyan Nieng. It is like this in and of itself. and it all belongs. You know, this very, very simple language, but the profundity of that statement is you know, it's profound. And so I would just encourage that it's a kind of humility, isn't it? A humility of intellect, is that the correct way to say it? Just the sense, well, this isn't to be figured out. It's just like this. And then in the trusting of that, things take care of themselves. Two more in the same vein. Today, when I followed your instruction to use the out-breath as consciousness, these are my findings. I can feel energy emitting through my fingers. I'm using sitting meditation with open hand mudra posture. Then my mind seems to enter into emptiness, nothingness. But I felt a sense of bliss, joy. And then the bell rings. My consciousness brought me to time's up. As I recall, during that moment of nothingness, there isn't any outside noise that is being heard, total silence. My question, what is this silence? Again, sorry, same answer. It is what it is. This is where you don't need to take thought. This is where you begin to appreciate no thought. Maybe that's the way. Just no thought feels like this, you know, rather than stimulate the sankharas, because thoughts are sankharas. And you don't want to engage the sankharas, just be the silence itself. So what is this silence? In Thai, you might just say, Mai Ru, Penyang Nieng. It's just like that. Is my practice on the right track? Don't have to answer that. That's a doubt. It comes and goes. If yes or no, if I'm not being woken up by the bell, what should I be my next step? There is no next step. There is only this moment. Time is a phenomena that is a concept. My usual daily sitting practice is 1 hour walking, 1 hour, 1.5 hour starting to do lie down practice and so on. That's my most. I would say, like, whatever you're doing, it's good, right? And to come to a sense of confidence that your own wisdom will work whatever things you have, but actually let go of the need to have an answer, to need to have security in thought. This is the way intellect works. It likes answers. So you create a doubt, and you think that doubt needs an answer, but the danger there is not that doubting is wrong and answers are good, but the danger is there. You get sort of, every time a doubt comes up, you don't see it as a doubt, and you need an answer. So you get this cycle: doubt, answer, doubt, answer, doubt, answer. Not absolutely, but that can happen. So again, I would just encourage this person that this is, you know, it's good practice. Whatever you're doing works, and just trust in that, and just keep saying, well, I don't know, but it's like this, like silence. What is silence? Well, thought is not silence. So just say, oh, silence is like this. If you know, I often read Luangpor Viradhammo's Enlightenment Peace. I think many of you have read that. In what was the name of that?
No worries.
No worries. If you have a chance, look that up. And in it, Luangpor Viradhammo is just going through the most profound states of insight and bliss. And the question comes up. He says, and what is it? He says, I don't know, but it is as it is. And that keeps him on the track. It's very interesting. Like in the last 2 days or last week of his, can we call it enlightenment process or summation, the profound states of mind he's experiencing. And then he experiences dullness. And, you know, I'm kind of reading him to see, okay, how do you handle that one? And he says, and it's like this. And it's like this. And he just kept doing that. And that to me was a very interesting reading. And then when he talks about his perception post-enlightenment of things, especially human beings, it's interesting. He says, and things were just as they were. People were just as they were. There were no fat people, there were no thin people, there were no tall people. things were just as they were. I said, wow, that's interesting. And that kind of sense of suchness is very hard to sustain because of the way the mind works and analyzes and does stuff. And then finally, of those types of questions, Luangpor is regarding my observation of the knowing. It seems that it has several features. I know the sound, thoughts, sensation of the body, feelings, etc., but I can't seem to notice the knowing. 2, I can notice all the above, and the knowing is me, or rather, I am knowing. 3, I can notice all the above, including me, and for a split moment, there's knowing. I can't seem to notice the silent knowing consistently, but it is always a combination of the above. May I obtain guidance from Luangpor? So, you can see it's the same vein, isn't it? The person's mind is settling into silence. And then the questioning is the knowing the object? And that's not seeing that the very restlessness of questioning is not being noticed as an object. And it's being engaged in, and hence the mind keeps a kind of restlessness. So that restlessness of mind of wanting to know, again, I would use the same formula. It's like that. This, I don't know. So around these kinds of questions, and there was another question. Where is that? Hold on a sec here. We have a wealth of questions. There was one about doubt. Yeah, for a person who is always full of doubt, how to begin? So, and so the person has a lot of doubts, and so on. But in the use of language, doubt is thought. Right? What am I going to do? What's going to happen? So what kind of language could you replace doubt with? Well, you could replace it with some simple formula, like a mantra. So one of the really simple ways of dealing with doubt is to just start to replace it with a couple of words. So you could use like infinite patience, boundless compassion. And you start to just pop that in each time the mind, what am I going to do? Infinite patience, boundless compassion. Luangpor Sumedho was, if you hear some of his talks, when he started as a novice in Nong Khai, he was an obsessed doubter, just obsessed with doubt. And he would just start putting in his mind, let go. But he'd really put it in his mind, let go, let go, let go, let go, let go, let go, let go. He's just constantly doing that because his mind was so obsessed with doubt. So doubt is thought. And if you take language, which you start to use language, but now you're replacing the doubting language with another language, which is reassuring. So infinite patience, boundless compassion. It's like this. It's like this. That takes a lot of self-discipline, but it's very effective because it's breaking up the patterns of doubting and thinking. Okay, so enough with doubt. You must be bored by doubt right now. There was one. Okay, I attended Christian Sunday school for many years when I was young, as my dad is Christian, but my mother is Buddhist. I used to be committed to Jesus in my prayers that I'll be a Christian when I grow up. But now I come to know about Buddhist teaching and found this is the truth that I want to pursue. Now, whenever I recite Musawa Daviramani Sikapadang Samadhyami, I feel uneasy because I didn't honor what I have committed to Jesus. How should I move from here? Well, I would say that Jesus is love, right? So there's no contradiction. So if you take the practice of Jesus, I say the practice of Jesus is love. The theology that comes from the time of Jesus is very complex, very, very complex. But the expression that for my sensibilities as a Buddhist is that Jesus is love. And then if you throw away all the theologies and all the complicated language that was put on whoever Jesus was, and the complexities of the church and confession and all kinds of things like that, and you just come to the simplicity of his life and his expression, and I just think his desire for his disciples was love, then it's easy. Then it doesn't contradict Buddhism. If you get into the theology, then it's kind of confusing. So I would say you're honoring Jesus if you're doing metabo, if you're doing Brahma Viharas, if you're kind to your neighbor, if you practice forgiveness, if you feed the birds and give them water and bird food. Seems to me what St. Francis was doing, or Jesus. So realize that you know, by picking up another set of concepts, it doesn't mean that you're against the aspirations of Jesus. And I do see that in love we are really finding the common ground, because if you look at Sufism in Islam, it's about love. The deepest sense of Hindu religions is about love, not romantic love, love more from the Brahma Viharas. So be reassured that you're okay. You're all right. You're still honoring. At least I would sense that. Now, like in Christianity, they'll say you should not bow to golden idols, right? So I got this golden fellow beside me. So am I committing a sin? Not really, because it's not an idol. It's a symbol. And so when I look at a Buddha image, I look at the tanka, I'm reminded of my own goodness and my own possibility, and my own love and my own compassion. And, you know, it's a reminder. So there's a difference between symbology and idolatry. So if you're doing idolatry, then you're not doing Buddhism. So, but people who are invested in projecting onto other religions ideas of idolatry quite often don't understand what those people are doing. So when we bow to a Buddha image and someone comes and says, well, they're idol worshippers, that's pretty shallow understanding, isn't it? That's a very shallow understanding, because they've never really asked. So I'm bowing all the time, right? But I'm not an idol worshiper. But I love symbols. I love Buddha images. I love those kinds of things. Luangpor, grateful to your teaching. May I ask for a person who is declared brain dead, but heart is still pumping, assisted by equipment. By Buddhist perspective, is the consciousness still around? How do we help such person, or even know if they can hear whatever we are talking to them? I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I would assume that that's a possibility. And so I would practice metta bhavana. I do chanting, and allow myself not to know. There's much of life is a mystery. I don't know, but there's a human form there, and if it's a loved one, then I would do my very best to express love and express compassion, which would be good for me. And the other, I don't know, but it would seem appropriate. So in what is consciousness, what is rebirth, there's so much we don't know. There's so much we don't know. But we do know that, when we can affect the world with love, it's a good effect for ourselves and others. And to allow ourselves the mystery of life, I think, is important, rather than think we have an answer for everything. Human intellect is limited. Can't know everything. And then someone's asking if it's okay to listen to Dhamma talks while they're doing other things like washing dishes. Fine, no problem. In morning chanting, when paying homage to the Dhamma, the word leading inwards being chanted as onwards. Is there any specific reason for the typo? It's just translations, leading inwards. You could see leads onwards. leading onwards can lead inwards. You can see it's just language. And because the inner realization leads you onwards to Nibbana, an onwards realization, realize that the work isn't here. So it's just language. It's just pointing to something, not, I don't even know if it's a typo. It's just, translations have kind of many variants. In trying the corpse, this is another question, trying the corpse pose, the Yoga Nidra, often I reach a point when I feel like my heart or chest area is going to burst open from trying to maintain stillness. And my whole body will then shudder spontaneously, quite strongly, and then relax again into stillness. Yeah, and then please advise. So that happens. And for me, what happens is I'll be doing Yoga Nidra, and then there'll be a point in my body which will feel like an itch or an electrical impulse. And then I won't move on it. And then my arm will shake. And I think that's a release of energy. And I find it's kind of, you have to be very patient with that. But sometimes, like in the evening, if I'm time to do Yoga Nidra, I'm tired and I need to sleep. And then my body just kind of does that. I say, okay, now it's time to sleep. But I have found that this kind of release of energy feels quite good. But sometimes it'll go like for 20 minutes, just this release, and then the body. So I don't know what it is, but I think it's just energy kind of finding some kind of balance in the body. But it's interesting, kind of, you're trying to maintain stillness and the body wants to do something else. I did that. Hold on here. Dear Luangpor, I can't find myself and it doesn't feel good. I have a lot of resistance, fear towards that. So whatever projection of fear you have, I might be afraid of giving talks. Another person might be afraid of emptiness. It's still fear. So take another example. It's like whatever I might be angry at. I might be angry at the neighbors. I might be angry at my partner. I might be angry at the government. Anger is still anger. Yes? In the same way, fear. The object or the narrative of my fear can be varied. And it's particular to me. So for me, one of the ways that fear came up was in giving public talks. When I talked to Ajahn Amaro, never was afraid of giving public talks. I said, really? Wow, that's amazing. I can't understand how you could do that. So the object of fear is actually not so terribly important. It is important in the sense if it's dangerous, like if there's a bear coming, then I get out of there. But if it's not dangerous, then the object of anger, the object of fear, the object of doubt is not so important as the underlying chitta, the mood of the mind, the aroma in Thai. So even though, it's like I can't find myself, it's better to go back to just a very sense of fear, come back to that. And that's a very obvious thing. And then can you witness it as a bodily sensation? Can you witness it before it goes into a narrative and story and thought? What's fear like? And fear is like this. And then because fear is unpleasant, the desire mind wants to get away from the moment, into another experience. And that's the task of the second and third noble truth, that not only is there fear, there's the desire not to have the fear. And that's what you have to figure out and diagnose and notice in your own practice is what is the difference between fear and the desire not to have the fear. Now it can go into thought, but then you won't notice it because you'll be one step removed from the fear. That's what thought does. Just as, like if I describe the tanka, like if I describe the color blue, it's a blue sky, that word doesn't really describe it. It's only when I stop and I look at that then I see the color. But the word is one step removed from the color, isn't it? In the same way, emotions, when you can describe fear as fear, but what's actually the experience of fear? And that doesn't have any language. And in that pre-descriptive or before you describe it, sensibility, that's where you get insight. That's where the insight can come. What is the difference between fear and the attachment to fear? So you have to just allow fear to manifest. It feels like this, and then you have to wait. And then the insights can come up. Now, I can say to you that it's attachment to fear that's the problem, but you have to see that for yourself. You know, you have to notice that. And the way you notice that is by letting things become conscious. So the way I often describe a meditation would be like, let the feelings in the mouth become conscious. And why I'm saying that is I'm not asking like focus. I say, just let it come up into consciousness. What's it like? And then you can apply that to something like fear. What's it like? Let it become conscious. So it comes up into consciousness. And then you'll notice the holding, the tension, the wanting to get rid of it. And then you'll see, well, it's not the fear, it's the desire to get rid of fear. And then you understand what metta bhavana, again, metta is like, oh, fear's like this. You open to it. Now, like when the person says, I can't find myself and it doesn't feel good. Of course it doesn't feel good because it's fear. Fear doesn't feel good. But are we interested in only feel goods? Is that our project? Is the Nibbana project about accumulating as many feel goods as possible? I don't think so. Because feel good changes. But the knowing of feel good and feel bad, what's that about? That's coming. That's the Nibbana project. That. I think I've done it. I think I have done it. Oh, no, here's one. Thank you, Luangpor, for the past few days of teachings. My question is, can we do metta bhavana to a recently passed away person? My eldest brother passed away in Cambodia 10 days ago, not due to COVID, though. Due to the recent pandemic, we are not able to fly over. His body is being cremated within the same day. Please share how we could dedicate merit to his passing, also to ease with the grief. Now, Buddhism has a lot of lovely rituals around this. And one of the rituals is to make offerings in the memory of someone and to dedicate the merits of that. So typically, like, people will go to the monastery, and I think most of you know this, and they'll say, I'd like to offer some food in the memory of my brother that's died. I'd like to share merits with him. And then we do rituals and so on. So I don't know how that works on a cosmic scale, but I do know that it works on a heart scale. And however consciousness works, and if the consciousness is available to that goodness, then that's going to be somehow beneficial. So there's a whole mystery around this ritual that we have, but we do have these rituals which are very, very helpful. Can you spread metta to someone who has died? I do. I don't know. I have read sometimes that you shouldn't do that. Someone who's died. I never figured out why. Like I have a picture of my mom and I send metta, and I don't know where my mom is, if she is. It's a whole mystery to me, but it certainly feels great. and if consciousness somehow has other realms of existence, then I'm sure it's beneficial. So can love be unbeneficial? I should think not. If the metta bhavana leads to bringing up the image and sensibility of someone that's died, will bring up grief, right? But is that a bad thing? I don't think so. It's a normal thing. So having the space to grieve is a very grief when it's contemplated as Dhamma is a very compassionate thing, because it's not about just personal loss. It's also about the human predicament. And that's what we always try to do in Buddhism. We try to go to the larger picture that, yeah, we're all in this together. you know, all of us are going to have to see our loved ones die, or we die before our loved ones. And grief is a huge part of our life, and loss. And when we accept loss into the heart and grieve and say, oh, yeah, we couldn't be with him. He was in Cambodia and we couldn't care for him. That's a horrible thing. That's a really horrible thing. And then you contemplate, how many people have to go through that? How many people on this planet have to go through that? And then this is how I think compassion is, that sense of unbounded compassion, that we all face this in different ways. And so the heart is actually goes to compassion with grief if it's done. If grief just becomes like if it goes into self-disparagement, I should have done more, I should have been there, I wasn't a good son, I wasn't a good daughter. If it goes that's not compassion. That's simply self-disparagement. So that's not really grieving. Grieving is like feeling the real, like the deep sense of loss. That's painful. And I think that's a good pain, because it does take you to the heart, and it's a very human kind of thing. So in whatever intuitive ways you can bring forth your love of this person that's died, and then do some kind of activity, dedicate the merits of your practice to them, it'll feel good. It'll have a good result. And I think, I think that's it, sports fans. I think I've kind of covered these questions, so perhaps we could close for today.